This is the Grow Your Clinic podcast from Clinic Mastery. We help progressive health professionals to lead inspired teams, transform client experiences, and build clinics for good. Now, it's time to grow your clinic.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Grow Your Clinic podcast. My name is Jack O'Brien. Super excited to bring you another episode today. And as always, really appreciate you sharing your car audio with us, maybe your speakers as you go for a walk or hit the gym. Really honoured and appreciate the support for this podcast, the reviews, the ratings on all the players. It is fantastic. And today will be just like all the others, jam-packed full of education and fun and information. So we have joining us today another guest. We have Hamish Vickerman from the Fasciitis Fighter, which many of you may be familiar with, but I'm really excited to get into the story behind the Fasciitis Fighter. Hamish, welcome to the podcast. How are you going today?
Yeah, good, Jack. Thanks for having me.
It is our pleasure. Super pumped to have you join us. Now, before we get into... I bet you are excited. I can't blame you. So before we get into your story and the Fasciitis Fighter, let's talk about some rapid fire questions, what you're up to, and so our listeners can learn a little bit about you. So you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. So question one, what are you working on this week?
This week, I'm working on treating clients 4 days a week.
Right.
And in between those clients, I'm working on all things Fasciitis Fighter. So I'm doing marketing, I'm doing social, I'm packing, I'm emailing. I'm sort of in charge of everything at the moment, just with the size of the Fasciitis Fighters. So yeah, it's a pretty packed in week. And I'm working on looking after my two young girls as well in between all that.
Oh, awesome. How old are the girls?
One's 2.5 and one's 5 months old. So,
hey, right. So you're in the sleep deprived state.
Yeah, you get used to it, don't you?
Yeah, just turned into a zombie for 12 months.
Yeah.
I've got a 1-year-old. Oh, she just turned 1 a couple of weeks ago. So there's light at the end of the tunnel. Rest assured.
So I hear. Luckily, they're cute, huh?
Exactly right. Yeah, you're not wrong. Okay, thank you. That's awesome. What are you learning?
Learning. So I'm always learning, I suppose, research around physio. Like obviously I'm a physio. I'm quite active online. So I'm always keeping up on, with Twitter, and Twitter's probably a bit more academic, but also your other Instagram and Facebook. So I'm sort of always on the lookout for new research, which is reasonably easy to follow with the world of the internet these days. And then it's around Fasciitis Fighter stuff. I'm sort of learning stuff around marketing online, sort of just how to sort of try and progress that and push that out to a greater audience.
Yeah, awesome. On the research front, who's your favourite maybe social media profile or account to learn evidence-based practice from?
Wow, there's so many great ones out there. I really like the Kettlebell Physio, so Neil May. I actually know him reasonably well. He's based on the Gold Coast. He throws out so much content. It's awesome. I followed some of the bigger accounts, like you guys like Adam Meekins. He's pretty sort of controversial, but I think he's good to follow as well. Challenges our biases, and so there's so many. But they're just a few, I suppose.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. And thirdly, who do you look to as a mentor or for inspiration?
Actually, as we were talking about just before we started the podcast, we were chatting about Brad Bear, and I've known Brad since 2001. We started university together, and he's just done so much in the physio space. He's built up a huge following, on social, but his clinic on the Gold Coast is a fantastic clinic with a really good name behind it. And so sort of Brad's been a pretty good mentor to me over the years, and so he's probably one of the main ones. Yep. Yeah,
I like it. I've looked at Brad for the best part of a decade now, and visited the clinic on the Gold Coast. He's an absolute legend. Been a guest on the podcast too, and he's actually presented at one of our Clinic Mastery workshops. He's a good friend of Clinic Mastery, so what a legend. Yeah. That's super.
A great speaker as well. Yeah.
Okay, so you touched on the fact that you're a physio. Let's wind back. Let's grab the story of Hamish Vickerman, and why should we listen to you? But where did physio start for you?
Okay, so I think I got interested in physio probably towards the end of school, as I suppose most people do. I played a fair bit of rugby union and tennis, and the niggles and injuries that come with that. You're heading off to the physio, so you start to get an interest in, oh yeah, I could potentially do this as a career. So I didn't get the best marks at school, but I worked hard first year of university to progress into physio, and did a double degree at Griffith University on the Gold Coast. So we did a 5-year exercise science and physiotherapy degree.
Yeah, right. Awesome. And if people hadn't picked up, there's a subtle twang in the voice. You mentioned rugby union. You're a Kiwi. Should we talk about the test that was over in WA? We won't mention Eden. We won't mention Eden Park. But happy to talk about the West Australian test.
Yeah, the one that you guys won. Yeah,
That one.
Yeah, rugby's one of my passions, but unfortunately I'm getting a bit old to play that now. So, yeah, we've got the World Cup at the moment, so it's exciting times. But
yeah. It looks like Australia and New Zealand, actually, in the quarters. Is that right?
Yeah, there's been a few upsets, so it's muddled up the ladder, and yeah, so it probably will be.
There you go. Sorry, I digress. So you've gone to university, you've done the double degree, and you're now straight into private practice, or was there a hospital element there?
Yeah, look, it's sort of was one of the things when I was finishing uni. Yeah, it was best to go to a hospital and get that experience in the hospital. But I wasn't really interested in that side of physio as such, so I was keen to get straight into private. So I did a placement in Proserpine in my final year, and I met...
Where's Proserpine for those unfamiliar?
Yeah, sorry guys. Proserpine is a small town north of Mackay, so near the Whitsundays, Early Beach.
Thank you.
It's probably mainly sugarcane farming. So yeah, and I met a clinic owner in Early Beach, and we had a chat, and he's like, I'd love to have you up, to Early. So my first year was private practice in Early Beach.
Yeah, right. And so have you gone back to hospital? You haven't crossed back to the dark side at all?
No, I just did a little bit of, I suppose, Proserpine has a small hospital, so I did a little bit of private hospital work, but I've solely been in private practice or outpatients in the NHS in London. I did a bit of time in London. So,
okay.
Yeah, primarily MSK.
Yeah, awesome. And is there a particular sports interest or body interest? Is there anything that led us towards what is now known as the Fasciitis Fighter?
Not really. I like to treat all body parts. So I don't really have a particular sort of interest. I suppose the last few years I've probably moved a bit more towards sort of people with persistent issues and figuring out why that's happening. But yeah, the whole Fasciitis Fighter foot thing just came about from a light bulb sort of moment when I was running. So I've sort of, pushed into that sort of area a little bit, I suppose. Yeah.
Can you tell us about plantar fasciitis loosely, or fasciopathy? Because not everyone who listens to the podcast is a musculoskeletal therapist. So let's talk about plantar fasciopathy, and what was your frustration with what existed out there as a product in that space at the time?
Yeah, so plantar fasciitis, betterly known as, should be known as fasciopathy now, just due to the pathophys around it not being inflammatory. It's a pretty common condition. You talk to anyone and they'll either have had it or will know someone that's had it. Probably affects, I think, around 7 to 10% of the population. So it's a pretty big problem. And the way we managed it sort of changed with a study that came out in 2014-15 by Rathliff. They did a loading study comparing it to stretching. And so this sort of changed the way we managed it from, sort of deloading it to let's load it up and see what happens. And I was, using that research and doing that protocol just with the traditional rolled up towel and seeing some reasonably good results anecdotally in clinic. So yeah, I liked the exercise. And then, do you want to go into how that came about yet, or do we?
Yeah, let's go there. Let's talk about it. So you've got this problem. You're thinking, there's a great exercise. And for those unfamiliar, one of the gold standard exercise for plantar fascia pain would be a calf raise or a heel raise with your toes in extension, usually done on a rolled up towel. And you're thinking, this is inconsistent, that's a problem. And so you've gone to develop a product, right? So how does that work?
Yeah, so rolling up the towel, it's just a bit annoying, and I often the client wouldn't be doing it correctly, and it's just a barrier to doing that exercise that has to be done reasonably consistent. And if you throw up these barriers, like exercises are boring. No one really has time to do exercise.
Right.
So I just sort of I was running one day, and I saw this. I think it was a gentleman. He was doing these funny calf raises on the edge of a bench along the beach in Burley, Miami way, where I was living, and I think it was the way his feet were positioned, and I thought, oh, that could work. So I just had this little vision of a shape in my head, and how do we replace this towel with something a bit more convenient and easy to use? And so I sort of started drawing a few scribbles on some paper, and I was chatting to a physio I was working with, and I said, what do you think about this? And they sort of laughed a little bit, I suppose, and we sort of had a bit more of a chat around it. And I truly thought, like, this could be something that people would like. So my dad, he was an engineer, so he's pretty handy on CAD. And so we started playing around with some shapes and just thinking what sort of materials we could use. And so that was the start of Fasciitis Fighter. So that was back in 2015, 16.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let's press into some of the learnings in and around this space. Had you ever invented anything before? I would say most physios or health professionals would say we're not very creative-minded like that. We're very empirical. What's the background there?
Yeah, no, definitely no previous inventions or ideas. It was, and it definitely a space I had never really seen myself being in, that's for sure.
Right, right. And it's quite if I can say with all respect, quite a simplistic design, but it's often the simple things that are most effective. You mentioned CAD. What does CAD stand for? CAD for the uninitiated? Is it computer assisted design? Is that right?
Potentially, yeah. I don't know.
We'll go with that. And so we're talking about 3D modeling on a computer, right?
That's correct. Yeah, 3D modeling. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so you're probably lucky to have your old man in that space. But tell me, what were some of the biggest learnings through this prototype development? Looking back, what did you learn most through that phase? Yeah,
so it was obviously coming up with a shape that mimicked a rolled up towel, and the comfort around it and the density of the material. I suppose that was what was probably the most difficult, and it's a new area to me. I don't know anything about materials and densities and how they last, what they're going to feel like. So this was all very new, and we started by just cutting up foam rollers and finding shapes that I thought felt reasonably comfortable, and then we just sort of I suppose titrated or adjusted that design, and we still there's still been some tweaks. I don't know whether the current model will need any further tweaking at the moment, but there's certainly been some adjustments to the design and the foam used. Yeah.
Okay. And tell us about the name. How did that come about?
I was sitting in a room like this, and I'm thinking, what do I call this thing? And I was Googling different options, and obviously a lot of stuff is taken already around foot exercise products. So I don't know how it just popped into my head. Fighter, like we can fight this condition. Fasciitis Fighter, that'll work. Yeah. But,
okay. So there's a couple of interesting questions that I want to press on. But firstly, we touched earlier on, actually, before we do, if people want to look at the design, I'm thinking there's people listening who have never seen this or heard of it. Can you run us through maybe your Instagram handle, or how can people see or learn what this Fasciitis Fighter looks like?
Probably the most visual option, the best visual option would be the Instagram handle at Fasciitis Fighter. We've got hundreds of reposts and photos of the product, videos of the product. So that's where awesome. You're probably going to see it in use the most. But also the website, fasciitisfighter.com.au.
Super, and we'll point people to get in touch with you if they need to. But let's come back to the name. So we touched earlier in the episode that fasciitis is lesser known now. There was a bit of there was a bit of vigilance, I guess, around the word itis, and should it be itis or opathy? Have you come up against any resistance or any trolls, any haters around that?
Do you know what? I thought there would be more, but only a few people have, and that's how it works. A few people have piped up on the socials and mentioned that it's probably not an accurate term, but if I released a product called the Fasciitis Fighter, it's probably not going to work, is it?
No, it sounds horrible, really.
And,
okay, and there's probably a good learning in that we are so, especially, dare I say, in the physio space, we're concerned about what our peers, colleagues might think, and we're so fearful of what language we use. And I understand that there's a pain science element to appropriate wording, but I guess the learning from your story is to not let fears of the trolls hold you back from going with something that just works. Most of our clients know, foot pain as fasciitis, and you've ran with that despite the potential pushback. But again, most of those pushbacks are all in our mind, and imagine they don't necessarily come to life. So there's good learning there. Hamish, talk to us about the physical product development. I'm sure there are health professionals listening to this who would love to develop and design a product. How did you go about finding a manufacturer and sourcing it? I don't know whether you do it locally or offshore. Yep. What are some of your learnings and stories around actual sourcing of a physical product?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, we initially just cut up a foam roller. So that was made of EVA foam, and that's your common, most physios, osteos, chiros have foam rollers or are familiar with them, obviously. And so that material felt okay, but I just didn't know what sort of density would need to get the right feel. You've got different varying body weights of individuals, and so we had the 3D CAD image data, and I just started, I think I jumped on Alibaba and emailed a few different people in China, just because I wasn't too familiar where to go. So I just thought, China, people make products in China.
Sure.
Let's give it a go. So I got some prototypes made in China initially. So that was a bit of a process. You send them the request, and that gets shipped back, and then you play around with it, or we might have to tweak the density a little bit, or the shape. So There was a little bit of back and forth initially, until I had a shape that I'd been using a fair bit, just testing it out, seeing what the sort of compliance of the material would be like, and the memory of the foam. And so I had this shape that seemed to be working okay. And it's one of those things, you want to get it perfect, but if you never push it to market, it's not going to happen. So I thought,
right,
let's just do it. Let's see how this first design goes. So I got a 300 made. It was quite a small sort of investment. It's just a foam material. So I thought, look, let's just give it a go and see if this product is going to work or not, rather than investing a lot of money and buying a whole lot of product that potentially might not sell. Yeah.
Amazing. And
so,
yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, you're okay. That's fine.
So wrap us some numbers around where we're at now from back in, you mentioned 2015, 16. How many have you sold, or how many people you've been able to help?
Yeah, so I actually should mention, which I was going to mention before. So the initial 300 got made in China, and then it just was a bit of with shipping and taxes, and it was just getting a bit complicated with that volume. So I found a manufacturer actually on the Gold Coast who cut foam and were able to supply the design for a reasonably competitive price. So we actually now get it made in Australia, which is good for local business.
Yeah, nice.
And we then get it printed at a t-shirt printing company. So they sort of worked out that they could print these devices for us, which was, I think, a bit new to them as well.
Yep.
So we're now getting the made on the Gold Coast with current volumes. I don't know what things are going to look like in the future, but it's working at the moment.
Yeah, awesome. How many people have you been able to?
Yeah, so I haven't looked at exact numbers, but we're probably up to sort of 4,000 or 5,000 units floating around in the world somewhere. Yeah. hopefully not floating, but being used in clinics.
And is it mostly Australia, or it's gone global?
Yeah, look, it's everywhere. I've had a bit of a geography lesson. They're going everywhere. I sent one to a tiny island in the Bahamas the other day. Yeah, there are obviously a lot of countries in the world, but yeah, they're just going everywhere. That's from our own site, and then we have a number of distributors now around the world. So yeah, that's the other sort of area where we're selling them into distributors.
That's awesome, mate. And again, let's press into the business model of a product versus, typically health clinics are service oriented. And you're in startup phase, and you mentioned you're doing everything from packing to marketing to product development. What have you learned about running a product business versus perhaps a health clinic?
So this is how naive I was. I had this product ready, and I was quite lucky to get some of the big distributors in Australia to take it on. It can be challenging for product companies to get distributors to take them on. So Whiteley All Care, they were great. They said they'd give it a go. And Brigitte Medical, they initially knocked me back, and then literally like a day later, the director's like, "Oh, no, actually, we're quite interested in this. Our podiatrist said this is a pretty good idea." So straight away, I had two great distributors, and so I was like, "Okay, so let's send this product to the distributors." Mm-hmm. And next thing I'm like, "Well, I need a barcode." I hadn't thought of any of this. Probably pretty simple stuff for someone that's used to selling products. So, packaging, I didn't even have any packaging to start with. I simply slapped a sticker on it. So I think back, and it was pretty raw, and it wasn't great, to be honest. But, like I said before, you just got to get it out there and start somewhere, and then you can refine it. Yeah. And then, I've used my personal social profile, which, I've got around 15,000 followers. So I've got a really good network of physios, chiros, osteos, podiatrists around the world. So I've used that social network to really just expose the brand to, basically all around the world. So that's pretty helpful.
That's awesome, mate. And which social profiles have been the most fruitful for you?
Oh, do you know what? Everyone's just been so great. It's unbelievable how the support I've had. I just, I'd write them a message saying, "I've got this cool product. Do you want to give it a try? I'm happy to send you one." No request for them to post it. And, people are great. They're putting up videos of it. And I think just because they like that product, and it gives them some content to do that specific exercise. So, yeah, I had people like, most people would know Dr. Jacob Harden. He's got 600,000 followers. He's a great guy. I've actually met up with him in Oz a few months ago. And it was bizarre. I sent him, because he had previously done an exercise using the rolled up towel on one of his videos. I'm like, okay, so this guy obviously likes this exercise. And I sent him a message, and he's like, yeah, I'll take a few. So he put up a video, and then like, wow, I just get all this attention and exposure. And, that's just one of the big accounts that has, helped me along the way. Tom Walters from Rehab Science and Caleb Burgess. There's just been, it's
awesome, mate. And I think, you've skimmed over a little bit, but it sounds like there was lots of hustle on your end on, say, Instagram, following people, watching, commenting, that whether you've heard of the Gary V $1.80 strategy of just being present, commenting, DMing, being observant, contributing. How much work have you put in?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And I sort of, I just probably, like you said, brush over it. But I spent a lot of time just, looking at people's accounts. What are people posting? What are their interests? What are people hashtagging? It's a crazy world out there with social media.
I think what I was leaning on was you don't just create a product, find a distributor, and put your feet up on the Gold Coast, right? It doesn't work like that.
Nah, not at all.
Or not in this case, at least.
Yeah, it's certainly hard work. You're following up leads, and people can message you at any time of the day. Like, I wake up and I've got these messages, and you feel like you've got to get back to them as soon as possible. You can't leave it for a day or two. So you you're replying to questions and emails, and just working on ways to build that brand as quick as possible, and
And if we look back to Jacob Harden et al., what role has influencer marketing played? Have you given away product for them in exchange for posting or anything along those lines?
Yeah, like I haven't paid any influencers. I've just given people product, and just said, have a try. You can use it for your clinic, your clients. So I've used a little bit of online marketing through your Facebook and Instagram. I've started getting into that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly, the influencer market's been great.
It's awesome. And what's the plans? Are we looking at more team or more markets, more countries? What plans have you got for Fasciitis Fighter? Any new products, or what can you tell us?
So there's certainly been a request around variations, but I just wanted to keep things reasonably simple and focus on, like that's getting it out there and not complicating things too much too early. I do have some ideas, but I just haven't sort of really pushed it yet. I'm still a one-man team. It's probably, and I probably will be for a while. I think I can still control, like I've got enough time to pack these devices and send them off to distributors. I do spend a fair bit of time at the post office. You work in the clinic during the day, and then you've been doing a lot of stuff, after hours or before work. I enjoy it. So, and it's a completely new area. So, if you're enjoying something, then, work can be fun.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's a great insight.
Yeah, I'd never, people say, oh, I enjoy my job. It doesn't feel like work. So, I can appreciate that.
That's fantastic, mate. I know I'm super inspired. There's often ideas floating around, but we don't often go to the extent of making them a reality and bring those ideas to life, distributing them, and really being part of the conversation is really inspiring. And I know a lot of our listeners will take a lot of solace in that they can diversify. They don't just have to rely on their hands for their therapy for the next 50 years of their career. You can add and contribute and make a difference. So thank you for sharing your story, mate. It's been absolutely unreal. Have you got any parting words of wisdom or stories, advice for our listeners at all?
Just like you mentioned, if you've got an idea or you're not sure, just give it a go. As long as I suppose it's a reasonably safe investment. It's up to the individual how much they want to push it. But if you never give it a go, you're not going to know. And I love being a physio still, but I enjoy doing various things, and it's given me another sort of income. It's sort of given me a focus. It's given me flexibility. I can spend more time with my family. I'm not as locked into clinic as I would be if I was just treating. So look, you just got to, give it a go sometimes, I think. And just like we sort of spoke about before, there's that worry that, what are people going to perceive me like? And, what's the backlash going to be? But, it is what it is. And hopefully if you do a good job, people are going to talk and people are going to like it.
Awesome, mate. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And if listeners want to buy the product, check out more, get in touch with you, can you just refresh for us again how they can get in touch, websites, socials, etc.?
Yeah. So if you just want to follow some physio content, I'm at Hamish the Physio on Instagram and Facebook. Fasciitis Fighter, we've got at Fasciitis Fighter on Instagram and Facebook. And then my website is www.fasciitisfighter.com.au.
Awesome.
And so, it's a double I. It's a little bit of a complicated word to spell as well and pronounce for non-clinicians, so that that's always a bit of a talking point.
We'll link all that up for listeners in the show notes as well. If you don't want to type or can't remember, it will be over at clinicmastery.com/podcast. Find the episode with Hamish Vickerman, and we'll link up all of those socials, websites, and the ability to get in touch. Hamish, this has been fun. This has been real. Really appreciate your time and sharing your wisdom on products with us here on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. It's been my first podcast, so thanks for having me and inviting me, and hopefully everyone enjoys the story.
No doubt. We love a good story and love a good product. So listeners, make sure you check out, again, links over at clinicmastery.com/podcast. Again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate your reviews and ratings. If you want to head over to your player right now at the end of this episode and give us an honest review and rating, that would be absolutely fantastic. I am super excited to wrap up this episode and can't wait to bring you another episode of the Grow Your Clinic podcast again very soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Grow Your Clinic podcast. To find out more about past episodes or how we can help you, head to www.clinicmastery.com/podcast. And please remember to rate and review us on your podcast player of choice. See you on the next episode.